Welcome to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. In-depth conversations and opinion covering a variety of topics from the world of news, sports, and more. Here's Mike McFeely.
This is another episode of the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. And wait, you got to close that door. Okay, she closed the door just fine. Good job, Abby Miller. My guest today on this pod, as we record it not in the Forum building, is Joel Heitkamp. So guess where we're recording this?
Just admit I was.
Can we
last
say that?
minute. Yeah, what they don't care, you don't care.
Okay,
I mean,
I didn't know if people care.
we got over that when we started guest hosting and ending up in each other's articles. I think
that's fair enough.
Right.
That's fair enough. Joel Heitkamp is the voice you hear, of course, the host of News and Views across the News and Views radio network. Did this on, I'll admit, short notice. I appreciate that. Thank you.
no problem. It's good to be that date at the prom that I didn't have a date.
No, that's not completely what happened. That's not. You weren't the third call.
No.
Okay.
The fourth.
No. You weren't the third or beyond call.
Okay.
Let's
good.
put it that way.
Good.
We're going to do some podcasting here, and I don't know what you want to talk about because I left it up to you when I texted you desperately.
Yeah.
I said, what's on your mind?
I have a couple of things I'd love to get your
All right.
take on, and this is number one because it's been driving me nuts. I'm blogging about this week, which is no one's ever going to confuse me with a biblical scholar. Okay. I mean, I went to catechism where they made me read the Bible, understand certain parts of the Bible, and some of which I forgot. Yep. I remember my father just coming out of Holy Week, kicking my butt, going to church, and you went to church when he said you went to church. But, the Bible still, to me, means something. And to see the ex-president out there hawking the Bible, using it for personal gain,
all right. This is where we're going.
Making sure that something's in it that doesn't separate church and state, and doing it all under the, hey, Lee Greenwood and I, I mean, he needs money. I get it. I understand it. But using the Bible to get it is just, to me, as a former president, is disgusting.
Okay. And so we agree. And the part that gets me, and you and I have talked about this plenty before, and you've, I'm sure, talked about it on your radio program. I've written about it, everything else, is Donald Trump is a man who has been married 3 times. He's cheated on every one of his wives. He has uses the Lord's name in vain in public. I mean, not even privately anymore. He's dropping S-bombs and GDs and F-bombs at his rallies now. He's just doing that. He is known to not pay his contractors. He's been known to maybe tell a fib every now and again, just small ones, like every word out of his mouth. I mean, if there are 10 of them, he's broken 11 of them, right? and that's all I know about the Bibles. There's 10 of them.
Yeah.
He's broken 11 of them. And so how he can do what he wants to do, but how do people buy it? And I don't mean buy it how do they accept it?
Right. I mean, that's the big question. And I keep repeating that, this is a man that if the public had Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Bill Clinton out there hawking Bibles, they would eat them alive. And I would add this, Democrats would say it's inappropriate. They
Correct.
would say it's inappropriate. But for Republicans to embrace it, to accept it, and to say, well, that's okay, this is their phrase, right? That's just Donald. Well, okay, how long does he get to quit being that's just Donald? Clearly with 40% of America, or 38%, never. He's never going to be in trouble
Correct.
with them. It's those people in between that are going to decide this election. And I have a really hard time with any independent talking to me saying that, he's just a better man. And I'm going to challenge that each and every day.
They're telling you Trump is a better man?
Oh, he's just a better man. He loves America better. He works on making America better.
People are making that case to you?
Oh, all over the place. I mean, these are people that are bought in, Christian fundamentalists
Yes.
I mean, look at that.
Yep.
That whole group. And if we think that there aren't any here in the upper Midwest, I think we're incredibly naive. They're here. I get calls into my show about, Joe Biden, if he believed in Christianity, he wouldn't support a woman's right to choose. And that's his one-way ticket to hell, and, all of this type of thing. And so they see Donald Trump as what Donald Trump is trying to put himself out to be and is actually used, which is a savior. He said that.
Because, and the reason that I sound baffled, and I know that those people exist, that no matter what Donald Trump does, I mean, he was right in 2015 or 2016 when he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't hurt my poll numbers.
Yep.
He was 100% correct. And we all laughed and went, oh, this guy's nuts. He was right. So there's that element. But I've always thought that so many Trump supporters, and this includes a lot of elected officials who are Republican, just see him as, they don't necessarily like him. They don't necessarily feel the need to like him, but he can give them what they want, whether it's a tax cut, whether it's fewer regulations he's just a transactional figure for them. Mm-hmm. But you're saying that there's a significant number of people, in your opinion, based on your experience on your radio program or being out in North Dakota or rural Minnesota, that actually believe what he says and believe him to be a savior and the second coming.
Oh, they do. I mean, I'm not saying that's the majority of the 40%, but there are certainly people there that absorb what the evangelicals say, and they don't see any reason for a separation. They're there. I get calls, I get text messages from them, and to me, that other group of people, the ones you just described, you went through the whole 10, and the only one that I would argue, which we don't really know, was the "thou shalt not commit murder." But but we don't know. But I mean, here's the thing that I find incredibly interesting, and I think it's true, knowing some of the people I do know, is he makes them feel okay about who they are. He makes them feel okay about cheating on their wives, about stealing, about filing bankruptcy, about not paying bills, he makes it okay to be who they are. And so it's like, hey, I'm not that bad a guy.
Yes. And where I agree with you there is particularly in the racism category. Mm-hmm. For years, Joel, and you know this, it's been out there, right? I mean, I've spent enough time and it's not even, I don't mean to say that it only occurs in small towns, but I spent enough time in small town bars throughout my lifetime, whether it was playing baseball or going fishing someplace, whatever, where you would overhear other conversations and I'd go, whoa, okay, wow.
Yep.
All right. Liberal use of the N-word, just awful things. And again, it's not just small towns, but that's where I picked up on, there's a different world out here that I don't know exists. Those people now who I overheard in the bar, they don't need to just keep it to the bar anymore, right? They can just come out and be who they are and feel that there's no penalty for it, because for Trump, there's been no penalty for it. Right? He just come out and say whatever he wants, and he might code it some, right? He's just not going to say the N-word, but he's going to code it a certain way, and everybody goes, oh, okay. Yeah. I know what you're saying there, big fella.
Right.
But he's made it okay for them to be who they are, to come out from under the rock.
Exactly. That's exactly what he's done. I remember the days when, as a farmer in the late 1980s, those were tough times. And there were two types of farmers. There were there were three. The one that lost the farm, that lost everything. Mm-hmm. Then there was the one that dug themselves out, that paid their bills, but they went without for a long time. And then there was the one that filed bankruptcy and ended up coming back in many cases as the one that bought up all the land because they came out bigger and stronger than ever. Now, that third one, the latter, was the one that everybody in the community disliked. Mm-hmm. They didn't like him, because they knew what had happened. They knew that he didn't pay his bills. They knew that the guy down at the elevator didn't get paid, at the fertilizer shop didn't get paid. And so they didn't like him. They weren't shaking his hand when the sign of peace was happening in church. But somewhere along the line, he made it okay. He made it a business practice. And it didn't matter that the guy putting up the sheetrock and the guy putting in the plumbing and that the guy putting in the electrical, that he took 30 cents on the dollar. It didn't matter. That was okay because that was just business.
You know, it's funny, though, if you put your name on enough things, that people tend to start to see you in a different way. Mm-hmm. Those things happen right here in our community.
Yeah. Well, and if he hadn't come up with the bond, if he hadn't come up with the $175 million, the Attorney General of New York was going after some of those things. And I think that meant more to him than anything in his life.
Really?
Ripping those names off those buildings. If you were her and you had gone after Mar-a-Lago, that would have been devastating to him. If you would have gone after one of his golf courses, if you would have gone
Trump
after
Tower in
Trump
New York
Tower.
City.
Yep. I don't think
you and I have both seen it, and we've both taken a look at it, and that is in a part of New York City that's the place to be.
Yep.
Fifth Avenue in New York City. I mean, that's it for Donald Trump. That means everything.
See, I don't think he cared that it got ripped off the wall at the casino in Jersey. I don't think that mattered. That was another huge failure where he didn't pay people. But if they would have been ripped off in New York where his daddy gave him all the money, that would have been devastating to him. And I'm not convinced yet that that's not going to happen. This was just a bond. If the judge rules that, hey, knock it off, this appeal isn't going forward, pay her, pay them, pay the state of New York. Those letters are still getting ripped off that building.
So we've talked about the evangelicals who believe that Donald Trump is the savior, this literally the second coming, and he's gonna make everything okay. Mm-hmm. This election, as a Democrat, I'm nervous. Joe Biden has some issues. There are swing state polls that consistently show him having issues in the states that matter: Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We all know what's going on out there. Those states and this election and perhaps the future of this country and democracy.
Just that little thing.
Just things like that.
Whether or not this country, the experiment actually worked.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal. Those elections likely are to be decided by people, whatever slivers left out there of independent voters and of people who say they haven't made up their mind yet. Does Donald Trump selling Bibles and just shamelessly hawking the Word of God, does that affect them? Because the evangelicals are buying them up. Oh, God, Donald Trump, Lee Greenwood.
But he had those votes.
But he had them. And people like me, he never, doesn't matter. He never had my vote anyway. The undecideds as they are, the 3% of the undecideds that are left, does this matter to them?
I think that the group that you're talking about in large part is suburban mothers, women. Yep. And I think it does matter to them. I think that you can go so low. And in his case, he did this clearly because he was in need of money. And I do think so, as we have this conversation on April 2nd, we're going to sit there and we're going to look at poll numbers. And there were poll numbers that came out today by the same pollsters that were guiding things before, that were asking these same questions. And since the State of the Union and since some of these other things, the independents have come back to Biden, well within the margin of error. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, but that needle is moved. Now, polls are polls. They fluctuate. Joe Biden falls down the steps of the Air Force One, the polls are going to change. Mm-hmm. But I think that, and I've always thought this, that in this election, people are going to look at it and just, those people you're talking about, and just say, I don't want this for 4 years just because it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's just exhausting to wake up every day and deal with this, to know that the people that are around him, that highest IQ cabinet that he ever brought in, they're all saying, I'm not voting for him. I mean, can you imagine if everybody where you worked didn't like you and found out that you were a
really bad example?
Well, yeah. Well, I know for a fact you've got a lot of friends that you work with. Trust me, and you did here when we worked together.
Is that when you have the people who should respect you and are with you every day, coming out and saying, this guy's awful. This guy's
because it
terrible.
says something about them.
Yes.
I mean, it does. If I go work for somebody and I'm incredibly embarrassed by them and I got to run out the door, I'm still the one that decided to go to work there.
Yeah.
And so these people, when you get the former, chief of staff and the former head of the military and the Secretary of Defense saying, no way, I'm voting for him. That means something to these suburban women.
So I have people, and I find this interesting. I had this happen to me last night at bowling. It seems like whenever anybody wants to talk to me about politics in this community, they always come in and, hey, Mike, keep up the good work. Like they have to, like they're afraid to come out and say,
right.
Hey, Mike, keep up the good work. Trump's a jerk. Way to go. Keep it up. They always seem to hey, just want to let you know I'm on your side. And then they walk away real quick. Yeah. It's like, okay. Anyway, when I have conversations with people like that, what I've told them since the last few months is just we're all nervous right now about Donald Trump being the next president or being president again. But keep in mind that he hasn't been out there a lot. He hasn't had to speak to America. You haven't had the chance to look at Joe Biden and go, yeah, he's old. Yeah, he doesn't have his fastball anymore. But then when I look at the guy next to him, holy balls of fire, is he nuts and dangerous and weird. And
he's old and doesn't have his fastball.
And he's old and doesn't have his fastball anymore. And what I kept telling people to say, I go, look, I'm as nervous as anybody here. But let's just wait to see how this goes through the summer when he actually, Donald Trump, has to be out every day, speaking into microphones, going to court, frankly, campaigning and being out in front of people and making mistakes and reminding people how nuts he is and how chaotic he is.
Yep. And if he's going to do that through a courtroom, it's going to be worse in the end. I think that the strategies that he used to be the victim, this gag order could be the one that really gets him because this judge isn't messing around and he's going after this judge's daughter. Now, imagine a scenario. Let me just draw a picture for you. The judge says, you know what? You're going to go wear orange. Now, in his mind, he's going to be the victim. Those people are going to see him, Donald, this wasn't, But imagine coming out of that jail that day and you had no hairspray or orange makeup.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Exactly.
Ooh.
I mean, imagine what he's going to really look like, that Wizard of Oz moment where you go behind the curtain.
Well, I'll compare it to this. We all thought, remember Saddam Hussein, right? We all thought, wow, look at this powerful, strong man. And wow, he's a dangerous dictator. And wow, this guy is so powerful. When he came out of that hole, remember what he looked like?
Yeah.
And you went, oh God, he's just an old man. Just a fat old man is all he is.
Yeah.
I mean, the veneer was off.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. He just looked like a man in fear.
Yep.
That looked like he had aged 10 years out of that fear. I remember, and this had to have been 3 months or so ago, you and I talked, and you had heard me on my show talking about Joe Biden's age. Yep. And you called me, and you said, knock it off. And the point you made that day was that, number one, in that same 4 years, Donald Trump is going to be 80. So you can't sit there and say Joe Biden's 80 without saying Donald Trump's going to be 80. I mean, it's the same deal. And then you said to me that, look, if anybody's going to beat Trump, this is what we have. Mm-hmm. We're not going to get anything else, and we got to beat Trump. So you told me, knock it off. And you were right. And so every time on my show now that somebody brings up Donald Trump's age, I always bring up Joe Biden's age. Yeah. I always say, and they're both going to be 80 in the next 4 years. It's just one already is. And so, you got to ask yourself whether or not both parties owe America an apology in terms of nobody young stepping up. But I really believe that behind that curtain, the Republicans are really mad at each other in the House because they felt they had the opportunity to not allow Biden to do the State of the Union. And, you mentioned fastball. Mm-hmm. It wasn't 98 miles an hour, but it was 92.
It was pretty good.
Yep, it was
pretty good.
Yep.
And he, maybe most importantly, is it wasn't 42.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody went, oh, this is going to be so bad. It's going to be so terrible. And the Republicans were rubbing their hands together. Oh, just wait till see this old man. Yeah. And you went, okay. All right. I'm not digging in too deep here because he's throwing some chin music.
Sue and I were high-fiving. So, I mean, we really were. And they had him prepped, too. I mean, when he walked in, he knew Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to come. And he knew how to react to her that made her look stupid, as though he had to. But, you know, I mean, he knew. And so he was prepared. And you're seeing it today as well because he's starting to do what Trump does. He's starting to slap him. Mm-hmm. I mean, when he's talking about, you know what, I'll give you, you're a golfer, Mike. I'll give you 3 strokes if you carry your own bag. That's a good shot.
Yeah.
When he told Trump that was a pretty good shot.
So you said that both parties maybe owe America an apology for not putting up younger, better candidates or more broadly popular candidates.
Generational.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. But aren't there people in the Republican Party today, like people who could have stepped up 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, and said, this guy's a disaster. Donald Trump is a disaster. It seems like he has all the momentum right now, but once this race gets into it, he's going to be in the fight of his life. And so are we as Republicans because he's going to drag everybody else in the ticket down. And oh, by the way, he's going to be grifting money off the Republican National Committee to pay his legal bills and all his fines. And so we're not going to have money to win that swing congressional race in suburban Minnesota that would allow us to keep control of the House. Is there any regrets at all from the John Hovens of the world, just to put a moderate guy who's never going to lose an election in his life? Are they having regrets? Well, do you think that at this point they're going, this is going to end badly? Or are they so afraid and so cowardly that they're just saying, hey, I'm not taking the guy on no matter what?
Yeah, no, it's the latter. But what you said before that analogy that you gave of who you just gave Nikki Haley and Chris Christie's stump speech. I mean, they did.
Yeah, yes.
They came out and said those same things, and they got beat for it.
But nobody got behind them, though, Joel.
Yeah.
Nobody did.
Yep.
Like Republicans who could have said, okay, I'm going to do this. We're going to get 12 senators together and stand behind Nikki Haley and say, she should be our candidate because she will wipe the floor with Joe Biden. Yeah. Because moderates will go to her, because suburban women will go to her, not because she's a woman, but because she's not going to be 80 years old or is not 80 years old. And she could present herself as hey, I'm not crazy. Right. I'm sure I'm more conservative than Joe, but look at me. I'm 45 years old. I'm not driving an Edsel for God's sakes. Yeah. I'm the next generation of American leadership. She would have crushed him.
Well, look at Governor Sununu. He endorsed her where you thought that would help in New Hampshire. It didn't. But he said all the negative things you could about Donald Trump, and then the minute she dropped out of the race, he endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
The minute she dropped out, the one person I give a lot of credit to and for courage is Liz Cheney.
Yes.
And here's the thing about her. She spoke in Iowa the other night. That auditorium was full. And I'm not talking about a place that held 1,000 people. I mean, she is drawing crowds for her book like crazy. And she's somebody that I think is doing somewhat of what you're saying.
True, yes.
And so the more she goes around this country, I hope, and I mean this, I hope she has security with her.
Yeah, yes. Yep, because
that's who they are.
It's frightening.
Yep.
I mean, when you mentioned Donald Trump going after the judge's daughter publicly, naming names, I mean, he is literally putting that person's life in danger. Mm-hmm. And the signal he's sending out is, oh, well, whatever happens, happens. Yep. I mean,
he knew what he was doing when he reposted the picture of Joe Biden hogtied.
Oh, yes, of course.
He knew it.
Yes.
And I'll give you a scenario. You drive by now, and this infrastructure bill is spreading money around this community like crazy. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's jobs like crazy. So much, in fact, that the workers aren't there to issue the contracts, right? But yet you see these people that run these companies out there on social media with bumper stickers, with all of these things saying, you know what, Brandon.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, it's like, why? I mean, number one, you're getting contracts because of the infrastructure bill, which was bipartisan.
Yep.
Number two, in my day, of managing rural water, you kept your mouth shut about politics because the check might be coming from the next guy,
Yeah.
And so,
but didn't we saw some of that with the COVID relief money, right? That some of these companies took, and then they knew they weren't going to have to pay it back.
The PPP loan?
Yeah, the PPP loans.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah, the PPP
loan. Don't forget, it was a loan.
Right. But they were the same ones then that a month later were griping about Biden talking about forgiving student loans, right?
Yep.
If you take out a loan, you pay it back, mister. And I would say, well, but I can look on this database here, and your company took out a loan, and you didn't pay it back. Well, that's because they forgave it. Well, yes. Okay.
Which is what we're talking about.
I'm a job creator. Well, okay, really? I mean, come on. The farmer's the same way. Right?
Oh, I've got a state senator down. Everybody's like, well, say Larry Luick. That's his name.
Okay.
His name is Larry Luick. He lives in Fairmont. He runs around and complains and complains and complains about, government. Government needs to stay out of our lives. Government. He's got an excavation business, right? What's the first thing he did? Apply for PPP.
Yes.
What did he get? He got $20,000 free from the government. What did he do now? If you go right now, he's selling off all his equipment because he's retiring.
Oh,
yeah. Isn't that
nice.
interesting?
Yes.
So I needed that money just to get through, and a year later, I'm
gonna retire.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I hosted or guest hosted your radio program, because I have the same issue with, I don't get the disconnect between reality that you can see and you can literally find facts but this is what we talked about when I guest hosted was a lot of rural people now obviously are Republicans, right? And they're Donald Trump supporters, and they're consumers of Fox News, and they're consumers of lowly rated conservative radio, right?
Right.
And so the example I used was Spearfish, South Dakota. It was a year or two ago. People in Spearfish, South Dakota jumped all over the United States Senator from South Dakota when he came to visit because they said, we're losing our community. The migrants are coming. They're going to take our houses away. I can't walk down the street safely anymore in Spearfish, South Dakota. And I wrote a column that said, really? You can't? You can't walk down the street in Spearfish, South Dakota? Because I guarantee you that if I drive to Spearfish right now, I'm going to find a beautiful, welcoming, safe community where I can walk down any street I want at any time of the day and feel perfectly safe. And so what I said in your radio program was, if you're listening in rural North Dakota right now or rural Minnesota, and you think this country is in the toilet and the migrants are coming for you and your daughter is going to get raped and your wife is going to get murdered, look out your window right now. What do you see when you look out your window? If you're in a piece of machinery driving on your land, what do you see? If you're in the town cafe, what do you see? What you see is nothing. You see peace and prosperity. Mm-hmm. You see wealth, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the world. And in North Dakota, with oil and agriculture, you actually see a whole hell of a lot of wealth right now. So why is the disconnect there? Why do people not believe what they see and what they live? The economy's terrible.
Yeah.
Is it? Because it really isn't. Because I've checked my retirement account lately, and it's doing pretty well, frankly, and I'm happy about that.
Well, and ask the person that got an 8% increase on their Social Security.
Yeah.
But here's
and oil and ag how many farmers do you know that are going bankrupt right now? That can't afford to make a payment, that can't afford the lake cabin, that can't afford the place in Arizona.
They're still buying the same color pickup, so you don't know it's new. Okay, so let's just be honest
all
about
the
that.
tricks.
But here's the thing. They hide it so well. And I'm going to give you an example. And I have friends who are in this business, and they get mad when I bring it up. And 1-800, you got to get over it a little bit. But there are a ton of migrant workers in Minnesota and South Dakota and soon to be North Dakota that work in the dairy industry. Mm-hmm. And they do jobs in the dairy industry that nobody else wants to do. Mm-hmm. And they're in dormitories. They come, they go, some of them are certainly legal, But when is the last time you saw Tammy Miller or Kelly Armstrong organize a raid of that industry? Right? I mean, they know where they're at.
Yep.
You know, it's a lot like the Untouchables. They knew where they were making whiskey and selling it, right? But you never hear of the employer. And so right now you've got a gubernatorial race in North Dakota where Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong have decided to turn this into a, I will wash Donald Trump's plane for him if I need to.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else, because they'd wash all of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
every inch of Donald Trump.
Hopefully with a pressure washer. But I mean, here's the other part to all of that. They consistently say that they're going to get in control of this migrant issue, right? Mm-hmm. Illegal immigration. But
because every state's a border state, Joel, under Joe Biden's administration.
But here's the truth. They don't do it. They would never punish an employer. If you want to really get your arms around illegal immigration, they're coming here for a better life for their family. Mm-hmm. They're leaving this terrible, terrible place. They're walking with everything on their back. And so, yes, they need to enter this country legally. There's a system, and I fully support that system. But that being said, if you stop them from having the ability to get a job, you know what you're going to do? You're going to stop them from coming. If you put your revenue and resources into making sure their life is better where they're at, and they're going to be next to their family, you know what? You might be able to stem the tide of individuals trying to get across that border, but they'll never go after the employers. Never, ever. Because these people are donators, these people are friends.
Well, I was going to say it's because they're friends. That's why. They're not going after their friends.
Right.
They're not going after people writing checks in Western North Dakota, right?
No.
I mean, no, they won't.
Yep.
No.
I mean, look at, and these people were working towards citizenship. I get that. But is anybody going to talk about the people that were working on the bridge that fell in? I mean, on that dreadful accident? These were migrant workers.
They were, yes.
They were migrant workers that were up there working on that in the middle of the night. Okay?
Yep. And why were they working a dangerous job in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Because nobody else wants to work that job.
That's right.
That's why.
That's exactly right.
That's why. And you have been to places like Arizona and Florida, New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, all those jobs that are the jobs where you go, oh, could you imagine doing that job for a living?
Yeah.
What do you see when you see people doing those jobs?
Migrant workers.
Exactly.
Yep. I was at, it was one of the times that the Bison were down in Frisco.
Yep.
And I got invited. And of course, the Cowboy headquarters now is in Frisco.
Yep.
And I was with a friend that's got a couple bucks.
Yep.
Well, he's got a lot of bucks. And his brother-in-law has more. And he took me to Jerry Jones's club.
Yes.
And I could see right where the helicopter lands, right?
Yep.
And this guy that had all the money in the world was a roofing contractor. That's what he did. And of course, that storm went through that area, and so there was just a ton of work. And he hates Joe Biden, and he loves Donald Trump. And he just kept talking about Donald Trump. And and he was about 20 whiskeys in. I was about 5, so I was still in pretty good shape. And I looked at him and I said, well, who are your workers? He goes, what do you mean? I said, how many of your workers are Hispanic? Well, most of my workers are Hispanic. Mm-hmm. I said, how many are legal? I don't want to talk about that. I mean, he literally said, I don't want to talk about that. But nobody, you're not going to see Ted Cruz ask this guy hanging out in Jerry Jones's club whether or not his workers are legal.
Correct. Yeah. No, that's
they're going to look the other way and just complain about them as though they're not working.
Do you think that Republicans killing off the border deal will hurt them at all?
Yes.
Do you think people see through that and go, wait a second here, we talk about a bargain and getting something done. Yep. Democrats offered everything. They basically offered a Republican solution to the problem, and you guys killed it.
I think it goes from being a 95% issue for Donald Trump to a 65-35 issue for Donald Trump.
That's a lot.
It's still there because all you need is people hitting that same drum. But here's an example of what I'm getting at. And you may be right that is a lot. But look at the poll numbers with Ted Cruz. Look, he's got. Everybody's talking about how the Republicans are going to take these areas, and nobody's looking at the states that the Democrats could win. Mm-hmm. And Texas is an area where the Democrats could win.
Oh, we keep saying that, though.
Yeah.
Every year we keep saying that.
Well, you know why the Florida, or I shouldn't say Florida, you know why Texas is the future of the Democratic Party?
Why?
Because it's the future of the Democratic Party. But you know, we have the good fortune in Texas of being able to run against a man that went to the Caribbean when everybody's deep freeze was out.
Yes, yep.
You know, so there's a lot of reasons there other than, Trump. And
well, and I'll tell you this, Ted, people don't like Ted Cruz.
He's not a good person.
They just no. And I too have friends in Frisco, haven't been down there many times, and I was also having a couple of beverages in a bar in Frisco, and the guy that is a good guy, a former politician down there, as a matter of fact, still involved with the Republican Party. And we were having discussions about politics, and I said, "Well, I'm a lefty." And he said, "Oh, I'm a righty." And he said, "But you know what, Ted Cruz, do not like Ted Cruz."
Right.
It just wow. I don't care if he loses or not.
And Florida's another
did not
one.
vote for him. This guy did not vote for. He goes, "I would not vote for Ted Cruz," and I'm a lifelong Republican who held office as a Republican.
And everybody who thought the Democrat was going to lose in Arizona. I mean, Carrie Lake is doing everything she can to make sure that the Democrat does win in Arizona. Yeah. You've got a situation in Florida. I'm not saying that the Democrats are going to win all these races. I'm just saying that when they talk about the Republicans taking over the Senate by 5, I'm not convinced of that anymore.
Okay.
And the other thing I would add to it is that the more it goes on to where the narrative is about Donald Trump, the more it looks like the election 2 years ago, where this red wave that you were going to see.
Yep.
I mean, imagine being Speaker Johnson right now. Does anybody have a crappier job than Speaker Johnson right now?
He raised his hand, brother.
Right? He's got the shittiest job in the world.
Yep, he raised his hand.
And so you look at that. That was supposed to be at least a 20 to 40 seat majority. And, you listen to national pundits who say that for the GOP, since this guy, he has become the party of the GOP, they've lost.
Yes, that is true. That is a fact that every election they've lost.
Yep. This House race, in the midterms of a Democratic or Republican presidency, the opposition party wins, and they usually win big.
There was a woman in Alabama recently, a Democratic woman in Alabama, in a Donald Trump, I think it was Trump plus 12, something like that.
District? Huge
Republican district. She won by at least that much the other direction. And this came after the IVF ruling in Alabama. It came after Trump. It came after. So for me, I see that and go, okay. I mean, I don't know that's going to happen everywhere. It's not going to be but that gives a guy hope, right?
Right.
I mean, if you can win by that margin that she won by in Alabama, which is, wow.
It gets your attention.
Get your attention.
I will tell you this. You did talk radio for a number of years, and from the debates on talk radio that when you get that person you're debating that's on the other side of the issue to do this, you're starting to win the argument. And whenever they pound and pound and pound about how, Dobbs was right and this is baby killing, and you say, look, this ruling that you guys are doing now, the North Dakota Policy Committee going into their convention is after in vitro fertilization. And you say, is that a human life? And they just do that. They take that long pause and they don't know how to answer it because Alabama said it was. And the Republican Party in North Dakota now is saying that it is.
And have said it before in the past, by the way. And so it's a hot button of enough issue and makes Republicans nervous enough that Yana Myrdal is now saying, oh, no, I'm for IVF.
Yeah.
Who says I'm not? What?
The one that started it all.
Yeah, the one that started and the one who literally was pushing personhood bills and the personhood amendment in North Dakota several years ago.
See, now
she is now coming out and saying, and whether I believe her or not, I don't, is a whole other question. But wait a second, we're for women.
Okay.
We don't want to ban abortion all the way, or we don't want to ban IVF. No. We're the party of women.
So let me ask you a question because I'm not sure if I understand who Yana Myrdal is. Is this the woman that introduced and pushed legislation that every classroom had to have the 10 Commandment up in it, then came on my show, and I asked her to recite the 10 Commandments, and she couldn't do it.
Yes, that's same Yana
okay.
Murdoch.
I just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely. Yep,
she,
same
she
one.
got to 6. and I gave her the first one. I did. I am the Lord thy God. You shall play. And I gave her the first one, and she got to 6. Now I, in fair, when I did this, knowing I was going to ask her that, got to 7.
You started.
yeah. And so I went and read quick.
This wasn't a pop quiz.
No,
for you.
this wasn't a pop quiz for me. But you should have heard that pregnant pause. She didn't know him.
Yeah.
She didn't know him. And you're right. She started this crap. She started it. It's here in North Dakota. And I don't think that the Alitos and this whole new bunch on the Supreme Court, that Thomas he isn't smart enough to think about it, but I don't think they knew what they were going to do. I don't think that they knew that this was going to create new waves of blue areas. And I think we're going to see it this fall.
Well, I hope so. But the other thing that the hardcore evangelical Republicans like Yana Murdahl need to know, and you know this as well as I do, is that there are Republicans who are calling me saying, hey, look at this bill from 2011 and look at the testimony on it, Mike, and you might find it interesting and write about it later. Bye.
Yeah. Oh, you're getting those calls too?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
I am.
because
Yep.
I'm getting those calls. Yeah. And they want some of these people rooted out of their
Yes,
party.
they do.
And
yes,
you know what? It's their fault too, because of what you said earlier. Where were they when it came to bringing this stuff up? They are the party of the man we've been talking about so much. They gave it to him so much and so that they let his daughter-in-law become head of the RNC. I mean, it is Donald Trump's party, and I know your age and you know mine. It will be for the rest of our life because little Donnie Jr. is going to be next.
Oh, no way.
Oh, you watch.
No
watch.
Way. Nope, I disagree.
He'll be stoned while he's doing it, but he'll be running around deciding it. Yeah.
A little Bolivian marching powder? Is that the way? Is that what they call it now?
Yeah.
That'll be another time. We'll have to do this again sometime before the June primary. How about that?
That's anytime you call, I'd love to do it.
Because we need to talk
even
about
if I'm
Tammy
number 2.
I've been told I'm number 2. I use that joke plenty, but I've been told I'm number 2.
Yeah, well, we delete it off the air when they call me that. So.
Okay, all right. Joel, we need to wrap this up. Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Joel Heitkamp, host of News and Views on the News and Views Radio Network at KFGO, KFGO.com. You can find his blogs there as well. KFGO.com, go to the upper right-hand corner. There's a menu. Click on it. Go to blogs. You can read the stuff right there. That wraps it up. This is the McFeely Mess Podcast, Inforum.com. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. For more podcasts and columns, head to Inforum.com and search Mike McFeely